How does a kid from Utah County who grew up a BYU fan become a star at Utah and a broadcaster? What happened?
Well, it's a crazy story.
And we congratulate you because it's a great story.
Yeah, and it was the right thing for you.
Well, here's the thing. I grew up I worked out with the BYU baseball team when I was a freshman. Coach Polans, who I absolutely love. I was a really good baseball player. Lavell is a relative, and these are people that I loved. I went to every game. I have these ties to Gifford. There's no question in my mind that I'm not going to go anywhere but BYU. I'm Lavell's number one guy. And I wanted to be that guy. And I wanted, and who in their right mind doesn't go to BYU in the 80s and 70s, 80s, 90s as a quarterback? And that was really what was going on in my mind. The problem was I was recruited by, the first letter I got was from UCLA. Colorado actually recruited me. I had some conversations with Nebraska. Stanford recruited me. Utah was probably my third or fourth choice at the beginning. Every time someone called me, every visit I went to these schools, I'm like, well, this is where I want to go,
Yeah.
And it was so much pressure. And I got really confused. I went to Stanford, and I fell in love with it. I always thought I was going to go to BYU. Stanford came along. Now they're gone. What do I do? And I went in my room, and I started to pray. And I'm praying in my room, and the phone rings. Jim Fossil at the University of Utah. My mom yells down to my room. Coach Fossil's on the phone. I go, I don't want to talk to him. I'm trying to get an answer to my prayer. And for years, I never told anyone this story because it's very, very personal. So I answer the phone. I'm halfway from the basement upstairs on the only phone we have in our house with the long cord. And I'm not listening to a word he says. I couldn't tell you what the conversation was. Halfway through our phone call, I had this unbelievable just presence come over me, this peace. And it was so powerful. I was just like, this is where I need to go to school. And I knew that my prayer had been answered. And so I didn't want to go anywhere but BYU. I mean, to turn away from that had to be a really powerful thing, and it was. I went to the University of Utah, and my experience was more personal. It really wasn't about football. We weren't very good. The only reason I threw for 1,000,000 yards is because I had to, right? I mean, we just weren't very good. So, but for me personally, I found my foundation. I found, my North Star, my compass, what really mattered to me in my life. And it's still that way today. So I'm grateful for it. Now, I missed out on the Heisman Trophy because Ty Detmer came, and I've talked to him about that, by the way. I just said, could I borrow it for like a weekend, or just give me a picture or something?
Yeah.
And Ty said this to me. He said, had I gone to BYU, he goes, Ty said, I wouldn't have gone to BYU if you were there. So he goes, you were my missionary, so it's all good. But I will tell you that I love Lavell. And it's one of the things I really wished I would have been able to do is to play for him and Coach Polans the same. There's a lot of people at BYU then and now that, I really think the world of. And
thank you for watching The Wise Guy.
If you like what you're watching, you can help us out by subscribing and hitting that notification button.